Alright folks, grab your 10-gallon hat and holster that skepticism, because today we are diving into the weird Wild West jobs you won't believe were real. These jobs were so absurd, so jaw-dropping, you will wonder if someone spiked the tumbleweed punch at career day. Unlike the Wild West movies, there weren't dramatic showdowns every 5 minutes. Nobody was practicing slow-motion struts in front of swinging saloon doors, and Clint Eastwood wasn't lurking behind every cactus. During that time, towns popped up overnight, vanished just as fast, and the local employment office, if you could call it that, was usually a poker table surrounded by 4 guys who hadn't bathed since Lincoln was president. The truth is, the Wild West wasn't a land of opportunity. It was more like a pale version of a horror movie. So today, we are going to celebrate the real unsung heroes of the frontier. The people who were doing jobs so ridiculous, so utterly pointless, that you can't help but ask, were those jobs even real? Yes, the answer is resounding yes. Let's start with the first weird job. The Wild West, a place so barren of trees, the local woodpeckers were bored to death. People quickly discovered that the Great Plains really meant great trouble lighting your stove. But nature, being ever so generous, offered settlers a solution: buffalo. Not for cuddling or eating, but for what I can only describe as the frontier's most brown-collar job, which is collecting buffalo chips. And by chips, I don't mean Doritos. That's the snack, not the business model. Now, I'm talking about dried buffalo dung, scooped up and sold like artisanal fire logs. Imagine someone knocking at your door in 1870. Hello, can I interest you in freshly baked grassland poop? Because nothing says aromatic food like burning animal excrement for dinner. These chip collectors didn't just gather poop fuel, they practically ran the EPA of their time. Low smoke, steady flames, and a slightly alarming pride in the people collecting them. Ah, good times, eh? And now, the most iconic grifter in the Wild West, the snake oil salesmen. These guys were basically the rock stars of BS. Their miraculous cure, a delightful cocktail of alcohol, opium, and horrifying chemicals like mercury and turpentine. It was a 19th century version of a detox juice cleanse. Only, instead of cleansing your body, it was just slowly killing you in 12 different ways. Let's talk about the most famous huckster of that time, Clark Stanley. The self-proclaimed rattlesnake king claimed his formula was created from an ancient recipe. The truth? It was literally beef fat, mineral oil, and red pepper. This explains why in 1906 he was fined for failing to contain any actual snake in his oil. Now every good grifter needs his merry hype men, and snake oil salesmen had plenty. These hype men were pure theater, convincing a gullible audience to buy a magic elixir that would cure every ailment, ranging from poor eyesight to a missing limb. They were like deranged carnival preachers, whipping crowds into frenzy until people were throwing coins at them for the privilege of getting sick. Honestly, it was less medicine and more like the Wild West version of a TED Talk, but with way more diarrhea. Okay, these folks' entire career was built around being a living, breathing notification system for entire communities. Picture this nightmare scenario. It's 1875. You are running a silver mine in Colorado with 300 workers across 3 shifts, and you need to communicate shift changes, meal breaks, safety alerts, and emergency evacuations to people scattered across a mile-wide industrial hellscape. No loudspeakers, no factory whistles, no communication technology whatsoever. Your solution? Hire a guy with exceptionally powerful lungs and hope he doesn't get laryngitis. These human alarm systems had to develop vocal techniques that would make opera singers weep with envy. Now to the third weird job in the Wild West. This one begins with a history lesson. But don't worry, it is the fun kind, with entire bird species vanishing. The passenger pigeon was once the most abundant bird in North America. We are talking flocks so big they literally blotted out the sun. And what did humanity say when faced with this awe-inspiring natural wonder? Cool, let's hunt every single one of them. Enter the pigeon plucker. These were people, sometimes entire families, whose job was to hunt and defeather these birds by the millions. Passenger pigeons' meat was cheap. Their feathers were stuffed into pillows, and their meat was basically the 19th century equivalent of cow rotisserie chickens. And yes, it seems silly plucking pigeons like some feathered assembly line, but the scale was terrifying. By the early 1900s, the passenger pigeon was gone. Extinct. Poof. Humanity managed to take a bird that once covered the sky and turn it into throw pillows. That's not progress, that's a crime scene. If there's one thing the Wild West never ran short on, it was diseased people. Between gunfights, bar brawls, cholera outbreaks, mining accidents, and the occasional "oops, I stepped on a rattlesnake" moment, the average frontier town saw more funerals than weddings, which meant that an entire cottage industry popped up around making the dead look presentable. Enter the coffin varnisher and the body stuffer. These were the unsung heroes who made sure that even if your life ended in a spectacularly stupid way, like falling off your horse, being utterly drunk, you could still go out looking halfway respectable. Coffin varnishers specialized in polishing and decorating the wooden boxes. Think of it like the world's least glamorous interior design job. Would you like mahogany finish or something that screams budget pine? Body stuffers, on the other hand, were basically early untrained morticians. Since refrigeration wasn't exactly an option, they had to preserve corpses using sawdust, arsenic, and whatever else was lying around. Yes, people literally packed dead bodies like Amazon returns. So while their job sounds horrifying today, in the 1880s it was a booming business, because nothing says frontier values quite like a side hustle built on making the dead look pretty for a bored audience. Another amazing career path, born out of ecological Armageddon. Say, settlers had already managed to turn 30 million American bison into one giant rotting carpet of bodies. And when faced with that, the question was not, should we stop? It was, how can we monetize this? First came the pickers, whose job was to scrape hides, bones, and the occasional week-old meat slab that smelled like Satan's armpit. The stench was apparently so bad it could knock birds out of the air. Imagine a job so revolting, it literally causes nature to faint. But once the flesh was gone, you had skeletons everywhere, and apparently that was poor manners. Enter the bone collector, transporting sun-bleached skeletons to railroads so they could be turned into fertilizer, sugar, and my personal favorite, fine china. Because nothing says elegant dinner party quite like eating cake off the pulverized skeleton of a buffalo. Ready for a job that can only be described as Postal Service meets Mad Max. Think of today's UPS workers, but instead of dodging angry chihuahuas, these Mustang male riders were outrunning wolves, bandits, lightning storms, rattlesnakes, and because, why not, hallucinations from pure exhaustion. This was the Pony Express, the internet of its day, only with non-existent Wi-Fi and significantly real rabies. Riders blasted across thousands of miles on half-deranged Mustangs that behaved like they had consumed 3 espressos and a Red Bull. Behind them, wolves. Ahead of them, bandits. And in their saddlebag, not gold, not treasure, but mile. Congratulations, you are risking your life so someone in Missouri can get a passive-aggressive letter from Aunt Martha. They swapped horses every 10 to 15 miles, survived on scraps, and had the motto, "Deliver the mail or meet your maker," which sounds less like a job description and more like a worst retro Fast and Furious sequel ever pitched. Let's begin with a job that was equal parts disgusting and annoyingly necessary, because frontier towns weren't exactly known for sanitation. When you cram thousands of sweaty gold prospectors, gamblers, and drifters into a half-built mud settlement with no sewage system, what you have basically made is an all-inclusive rat spa resort. Throw in some whiskey barrels and food storage in damp basements, and suddenly you have got an infestation so luxurious it may as well have been sponsored by Chuck E. Cheese. Enter the professional rat catcher, who got paid per rat tail. Yes, the economy literally ran on tiny, plague-soaked tokens. And because this was the Wild West, some even used dogs or ferrets to chase them down. Although the ferrets often vanish into the walls like furry little tax evaders they are, these rats carried disease and could destroy food supplies overnight. So while it sounds absurd now, back then it was a difference between eating bread or eating your boots. When a hog got loose in a frontier town, it wasn't Charlotte's Web. It was Jurassic Park with bacon. These weren't cute pink piglets. They were half-feral, furious meat missiles that could cause serious damage to property and humans. So, instead of wasting valuable cowboys, towns invented the hog-snouter, which, yes, is exactly as stupid as it sounds. Usually, some poor man was told, "Congratulations, your job is to corner an enraged 200-pound murder pig and grab it by the nose." That's not employment, that's a hazing ritual. This job's ad poster more or less goes like this: wanted, a hog-snouter, must enjoy danger, humiliation, and the occasional loss of a finger. The pay, one sandwich, and a lifelong trauma. It was a job born out of necessity, desperation, and the unspoken agreement that anyone wearing a cowboy hat was too cool to wrestle a pig. I hope you like the weird and dangerous jobs in the Wild West. I'll see you in the next video. Peace out.